All right, welcome to a little mixed stream tonight. I was going to do two separate streams, but you know what? I really don't feel like doing a separate stream on Katie Joy for obvious reasons, because she's just not really worth my time as of recently. However, there is a little bit of new news that has come out that the courts have decided to not give the default judgment, which was no surprise. I actually said that I really, really doubted they were going to give the default judgment because courts tend to want to evaluate and judge things on the merits of the case rather than giving a default judgment if they can weigh the evidence rather than just say, hey, you didn't show up to court. And I get it. I get those reasons for that. So I didn't think that she was going to get a default judgment against her on that. So the court did rule against that, but they did rule that she would have basically, I guess a gag order is the best way to put it. It's not really a gag order. It's a protective order, but it's an information protective order that any restricted data or confidential information will not be going to her. It'll be strictly to the attorneys and to the courts. So that is actually pretty cool because she won't be able to weaponize any of that stuff. And it will be going to trial probably, I would guess, around early 2024. The last pretrial conference is in October 2023. The first due date for discovery, I believe, is May 31st, 2023. So that's not that far away. So it looks like they've got about a year of legal things going back and forth. Yeah, court cases take time. But anyways, that's really all I want to update on without a crystal ball, aka Joy Paulson. Anybody who's still falling with her, you're just human garbage. Anybody who supports her, you're just human garbage. Anybody who thinks that she isn't a commensurate liar, just a horrible sociopath human being, yeah, you're just a piece of garbage. I mean, I really don't know how else to even go with that. She just lies about people constantly on her channels. I don't get how she can isolate her Instagram, her YouTube, her Facebook so amazingly separate from each other that people on one platform don't know what's going on the other platforms like Twitter or whatever. It's just mind-blowing how she can compartmentalize, and she has all these people have no idea the real Katie Joy, but we do. So I just want to give you an update on that. But anyways, let's get on to the more interesting kind of stuff, more probably what you're here for than the Katie Joy crap. But I wrote a note blog the other day, and I have not had time to really have anybody proofread it. This is something that kind of came up on the fly, so to speak. And so when I do that kind of stuff, I call it 3 a.m. philosophy because a lot of that stuff I do at 3 a.m. And so, my stuff can contain errors. And what I do is, for the people on Facebook who haven't quite figured it out, I throw it up on Facebook in various groups and I see who can attack it. Now, clearly, I realize that 99% of the people in this Facebook groups don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, so they're not going to be able to really attack these arguments with any kind of veracity or even understand how to properly attack any kind of structured, logical argument, whether it be a syllogism or some kind of simple logical argument from a rule of inference. They're not going to be understanding how to properly attack that, which I may address in this stream. But it is kind of comical because they're just like, you're just wrong. Okay, great. But, I'm looking for somebody who actually knows what they're doing that can actually point out errors. Why? Because I want my arguments to be correct. I want my arguments to make sure that they are bulletproof as much as possible. This is why my WASP argument and my atheist semantic collapse argument has really stood the test of time because they've been vetted over and over and over again. People that do have advanced degrees in these particular topics have read them, and they just haven't found any errors to date. So that to me really kind of is testing argumentation. Matter of fact, the suffix ISM is kind of understood, as Draper puts it in Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, something can be tested by argumentation. And that's what we like to do. We like to test things by argumentation. And this is why New Atheist TM and people like Aron Ra, they don't really test these things by argumentation. When this particular topic came around, he just said I was wrong by fiat. He didn't actually explain why. I said to Aron, if you can't show it, you don't know it, which is his popular phrase that he has. And he wasn't able to show it, and of course he blocked me. Now, again, let me make it very clear. I have no ill will toward Aron Ra. I think that his work on phylogeny is outstanding. I'm still a huge fan of the foundational falsehoods of Christianity, or creationism. I'm sorry. Actually, there's a difference there. But the the book series is great. You know, and it's a shame that Aron let his dogmatic thinking come in the way of, you know, friendship, but that's okay. I mean, I get it. I'm not, you know, upset by it. Again, I think Aron has a really good heart. I just think he's really dogmatic, and I know this to be the case because he's told me he's been intransigent. God, oh my god, I'm having a heck of a time today. Intransient. There we go. Intransient. To certain things to change because, you know, he once argued that we weren't evolved from monkeys, and a zoologist actually had said, "Hey, we did evolve from monkeys," and you know, Aron thought he was an idiot and such like that. And then after he looked at the evidence, he finally realized, hey, yeah, we are actually descended from Cercopithecida, which is monkeys, old world monkeys. So yes, we did evolve from monkeys. And that was a hard thing for Aron to accept and admit. But when it comes to logic, I guess, and when it comes to atheism, he will not ever refuse to. He is a presuppositionalist when it comes to that particular topic. No amount of evidence can change Aron's mind when it comes to the philosophical understandings of atheism. No amount of evidence can change his mind when it comes to logical arguments that refute his positions. So that what I would consider to be presuppositional atheism, and to agree, not that he holds atheism as a presupposition, but he holds a position that he cannot be wrong. He has told me if he is wrong, his entire life's work is for naught. Basically his words. So you know, you can't really fix that. And so what I do is I explain why I believe Aron has made significant mistakes. If people agree, great. If they don't, that's fine too. I just ask why they don't agree. But these two fallacies, one of them I did not coin specifically because of him, but because of New Atheist, which he falls into, a New Atheist TM, which he falls into. So I in a way, yeah, I kind of coined the fallacy names because of him, I guess, or at least the mindset that he has, which I'll be getting into in a second. And, oh, okay. By the way, hi, live chat. I see you're out there. Yes, peace. Somebody says, are you and Aron Ra still cool? Not on his end. On my end, I'm just fine. Like I said, I got nothing against Aron. I just think he's fractally wrong. I think that he doesn't have the fortitude or the skill set to actually argue on topics he isn't familiar with. And so when it comes to something like this, I don't think he could ever face, you know, the arguments one-on-one with me or anybody that's running them, because it's logic, and I believe logic is objective. And he'll just spew nonsense. Like, he still believes that the philosophical understanding of atheism as the belief that God does not exist is Christian influenced. I mean, he really does. It's conspiratorial. It's complete nuttery. He has gotten the etymological history of the word atheism incorrect. He has been corrected on that by Faithless Pheasant, who actually did reach out to an author of a book called Battling Against the Gods, I think it was. I think that was the name of the book. I have the book, Battling of the Gods, but it was a guy named Tim, what was his name? Tim Whitmarsh, that was his name. Tim Whitmarsh. And, you know, he just couldn't understand that atheism isn't really derived from the Greek. It's derived from the Middle French. And that it doesn't mean what he thinks it means. It never did mean what he thought it means. And he thought that Christians were lying to him about that. He has a weird understanding about the not just the etymological understandings, but the prefix of the Greek alpha privative a. He recognizes, I think, that it means not, but he'll also say that it means without, but it doesn't mean that. The prefix can mean that, but it doesn't mean that in atheism. It is not as a negation. But this is the mistake that we'll be going over tonight, that I will be talking about, that the negation doesn't go on the predication. It goes on the proposition. So when they say negation, they mean the negation of P or G or whatever you're using for the propositional symbol. That if atheism is the negation of theism, what they're saying is it is the negation of the proposition of theism, not negation of the belief. And so we were talking about that, and this was some time ago. But, you know, he said I had a double negation in one of my explanations to him, and he's absolutely 100% incorrect on that. Not just from a logical point of view, but from a grammatical point of view. And so I coined a fallacy name for that as well. So I'm going to be diving into this. Joey says, I would really like you and Aron to speak on these live, maybe on non-sec. I would be absolutely not against it, but Aron will never. Aron knows he cannot refute this stuff. Aron knows he doesn't have the capabilities to. There is, you know, Dr. Dr. Michael, that is a linguist that has already told Aron he's completely wrong on this stuff. I'm pretty sure that Malpass has probably told him he's wrong. Other people have told Aron that he's just not correct in his understanding of basic logic, not understanding basic epistemological concepts. And now, again, I'm a complete layperson. I express no expertise in any of these things. However, I will solidify myself in the philosophical communities for having new arguments, novel arguments, that, yes, are derivative to some degree, like any other argument, but I think I add a spin to it and I formalize them. And when you have a formalized argument, it is logically based. You need logic to show that it's wrong. You need to show what the error is. And this is where new atheist TM just do not know how to attack an argument. If you say a premise is wrong, you need to show why it's wrong or give reasons why it's wrong. You can't just say, that premise is wrong. And so, before we even get into this, let's kind of do a review of how to properly attack an argument. So if you're watching this, you can attack these arguments by either of these ways. But the simplest way to attack an argument is just to see if it's valid, right? If you can show a argument to be invalid, you're done. Game over. That means it doesn't follow from some kind of rule of inference. If it's affirming the consequent fallacy, if it rains tomorrow, my car will be wet. My car is wet, therefore it rained tomorrow. That's affirming the consequent. That's a fallacy. You're done. It's invalid. So if the structure is invalid, that's a great way to show that the argument is not good. Doesn't mean the conclusion is not correct. You don't want to commit the fallacy. Just because there's an error in the formal reasoning or informal reasoning doesn't mean the conclusion isn't true. So you got to be careful of that. The other way to attack an argument is just to attack the premises, and that's the soundness. An argument that's valid and sound has all true premises where the conclusion must necessarily follow locally and be true from a proper rule of inference, some kind of inferential structure that's deductive. And if you can show that a premise is false, then that argument's bad. Now, if you don't accept a premise, that doesn't show that the argument's bad. Now, again, there's a difference between rejecting a premise and not accepting a premise. Rejection in logic is generally understood in the Fred Geach approach for rejectionism as accepting negation, or believing negation more specifically. But in the classical rejectionism, it's just reject means to accept false. And so, if you say you reject premise one, you're saying to the person premise one is false, and then you have some kind of discursory, I think, onus burden to explain why you think that the premise is false. If you don't accept a premise, that's fine. You just say, I don't accept it, and you don't accept the argument. Okay. Now, you should be able to give reasons why you don't accept it. I grant that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're showing the premise to be false. If my first premise is, 1 + 1 = 3, clearly that premise is false. I mean, it's objectively false. And so you want your premises to be true to have a true conclusion. So that's the other way. So if you say a premise you don't accept, okay, that's fine. But that's not refuting the argument. It's not showing that the actual argumentation is wrong. So let's dive into this. I have this as an open hangout. If people want to come in, that's completely fine. The link to join is pinned to the top. And how about we just dive into this? Sound good, all? Let's do it. All right. So the Aron Ra Fallacies. Aron Ra has two significant fallacies that don't really have a name. However, I coined two fallacies that I think best explain what I believe are significant errors that Aron Ra and other new atheist TM often have when discussing atheism on social media. And again, I didn't come up with the term atheism TM. That's been out there on Reddit for a very long time. I just enumerated what I believe are the properties of new atheist TM, which I've gone over before. Oh, by the way, I'm drinking this amazing brown Korean coffee. Never had it before. It tastes like a mix between coffee and hot chocolate. It is so good. So if you hear me sipping, oh, well, I'm sorry. I'll try to be quiet, but it's so delicious. All right, so let's get into the fallacies. Fallacy number one. And by the way, I need to redo my blog so I can have it more easily read, I think. I know it's very tough. I know people had a hard time reading it because it was a kind of a gray on white. So I made a black background and at least made it pop a little bit more. So I'll try to work on it. I apologize that it's not easy to read, but I'm not a web person. So, all right, so let's dive into it. I only have about 2 hours to do this because I have I'll just call it a date tonight, but it's not really. It's not a date. I just have a meeting tonight or something. All right. Fallacy number 1. I call this the, and anyway, I didn't coin this specifically for Aron, but it works. Argumentum ad prescriptorium. Argumentum ad prescriptorium is the fallacy of attempting to derive a prescription from a description. Aron Ra and other new atheists do not seem to understand what is actually meant by the term descriptivism versus the term prescriptivism, which is ironic since many new atheists TM will say English is a descriptive language and dictionaries merely describe usage in a sensu lato sense, meaning in a very broad sense, as opposed to sensu stricto or sensu strictissimo. They still argue from a dictionary as if it was prescriptive. And what I mean by this is that English language is a descriptive language in such that the dictionary tells you how a word is basically being used synchronically rather than diachronically, which is how a word is being used in modern times and currently rather than over a period of time. Now, there are some diachronic dictionaries. I know Oxford has one, but most dictionaries will tell you just how a word is being used at the time. And so it gives you a very broad usage of it. It gives you the most liberal possible usage of it. It's not specific. It's not meant to be specific, but it describes the word usage. It doesn't prescribe it as in, this is how you must use this word. Or if you match the description of the word, you are the word, right? It doesn't work that way. John says, at this point, I feel Aron is being dishonest. I agree with you. That long-haired guy told Aron that you are technically correct, Steve. Which long hair guy? Oh, I mean, anybody knows with these topics have always said that I'm correct, whether it be technically or otherwise. But everyone that's ever had any kind of understanding of logic, epistemology, or philosophy has always come down on my side. Every single one of them. I mean, any errors that I would have made or have made have long since been corrected, and they were very minor stuff. And they were just basically, I think most of them were typos and stuff like that. But I mean, have you ever heard, Malpass or Ozzy or Dr. Michael or any of them? I mean, Oppie. I mean, I have Oppie on the show. Nobody has ever said, hey, Steve's arguments are super, super duper flawed or anything like that. I mean, I had Dr. Demi read my paper, how the presumption of atheism leads to how the presumption of atheism by symbiotic square of opposition leads to semantic collapse. And Debbie didn't find any issues with it. And he's got a PhD in logic. I had Dr. Abbas read it, who is a UK expert in dialectic logic. I didn't have him read it. Dr. Malik asked him to read it. And he said, good job to the author. He's like, he didn't find any errors, and he give you, they give some helpful suggestions, which they do when they're in a peer review stuff, because it didn't make it to peer review, but it was pre-peer reviewed by experts, and they gave some helpful suggestions, some of which I took on board, and others I said, hey, I appreciate that, actually makes sense, and if it comes up, if somebody attacks the paper, I will bring it up then, rather than, put it in the paper. So I appreciate that. So anyways, this is the error that I think a lot of them make. I said, if the dictionary says atheism, disbelief or lack belief in the existence of God or gods, and that's generally what's found when you go Google, the word, right? Oh, we're going to do Google foo. We're not going to go to a specific dictionary or encyclopedia or reference. We're going to just do some general Google foo, which makes sense. I mean, it just makes no sense, because if you want to know how a word is used in medicine, you probably want to go to a medical dictionary. If you want to use a specific word in science, you might want to use a scientific reference. This is where I think New Atheists and Aron are very, very inconsistent. If he uses a word when it comes to biology, he's going to consult a biological reference. Why is it any different for philosophy? It's absolutely hypocritical. Oh, yeah, off the atheist. Yeah, Lawrence absolutely agrees with me. How is it not hypocritical that you're going to use a technical source for biology, science, physics, which you should, medicine, but you don't do the same standard or don't hold yourself to the same standard for philosophy? So, all right. So disbelief means to believe something false. Another error Aron makes, but I think he may have corrected that one. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think my recollection is such he did correct that. If I'm wrong on that, please let me know. But at one time, he did not understand that disbelief meant to believe something's false. And this has been I have that on my blog. I've well cited that going back to the American dictionaries, century dictionaries from like the 17th or 18th century, I think it was, and other citations that in logic, disbelief P means to believe negative P or not P. That's just how it's understood. And so when you go to a colloquial dictionary, it says, something like, unable to, believe, unable to believe. Well, that's a completely different thing, right? That's a colloquial usage of a term that's not appropriate for when you are asking somebody, do you believe P? You don't say, well, I'm unable to believe P. I stared in disbelief on the proposition God exists. It makes no sense. That's not the connotations being used for that. So when people use a Google foo to say, oh, look, disbelieves, this means, unable to believe or something like that. That's not how it doesn't even make sense. I stared in disbelief about the proposition of God existing. It's dumb. Straight up dumb. I don't know how else to put it. So yes, disbelief means to believe negation. That's ubiquitous in logic. Every place I've ever found says that. Every paper I've ever read says that. And so Aron made that fundamental mistake, and so did Matt Dillahunty. Matt Dillahunty actually told a caller he was wrong about that, and the caller's like, no, Matt, I'm not. And it's funny because even American Atheists, which Aron Ra was a regional director of or something like that, even says atheist. It says, quote, you go look. I'm not going to bring it up right now, but go look. It says in the about atheism. What is atheism? It says atheism is not the disbelief that God exists. And ours was telling me it was the disbelief God exists. And I said, yeah, I know it's a disbelief, but disbelief means to believe in negation. Atheism is the disbelief that God exists. It means atheism is the belief that God does not exist. And he's like, that's not what disbelief means. Atheism is the disbelief, but this means lack of belief. And I'm like, no, Aron, it's not. You're just wrong. And even American atheists disagreed with him. How hilarious is that? So I think he might have corrected that one after he realized he made a major faux pas and he was going against his own organization. So, but both disbelief and lack of belief describe an atheist. Those are both descriptors. As I wrote in my essay, by description, which I probably should have put in the video description, which I will afterwards, those describe an atheist. Yes, does an atheist disbelieve God? Yes. Does an atheist lack a belief? Yes. Disbelief actually entails lack of belief. If you disbelieve P, you lack a belief in P. There's a epistemic entailment there. But in fact, that was the biggest issue that Demi pointed out to me. He agreed with me. He said you may want to word it a little differently just so they can't attack it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I get it. But I want this usage because this is just kind of what's in the literature, and I could kind of use citational references for it. But yes, there's a difference between a logical entailment and an epistemic entailment. And my paper is based upon an epistemic entailment, not a logical entailment. And that's a huge thing to differentiate between. And Dr. Demi is completely right on that. And I knew that. But I was like, yeah, I don't want to really get lost in the weeds on that, I guess. But if you disbelieve P, there's a epistemic implicature that you don't believe. It's not a logical entailment. Sorry. I really love this. Coffee. All right. Given the Google definition of atheism, belief that God does not exist, or the lack of belief that God does not exist, this is how the two renderings should be. The first one is the descriptivist rendering. Does the belief that God does not exist describe an atheist? Yes, it does. Does the lack of belief that God exists describe an atheist? Yes, it does. Both describe an atheist. If I was to say a polygon with four sides, that describes a square. Now, is it sufficient? Clearly not. It is necessary. Having four sides as a parallelogram is necessary to be a square, but it certainly is not sufficiency. If I would say something more along the lines of a two-dimensional polygon with four equal sides with four internal right angles, that would be more along the lines of sufficiency, which describes a square. But you do find more prescriptive definitions in mathematics. You won't find them in English, but you do find them in mathematics. So, but the point being is both those things describe an atheist, do they not? Does everybody agree with that? Anybody out there in the live chat do not agree with both of those describing an atheist? That if you said, hey, this person believes there's no God. Okay, that's describing what an atheist is. They lack a belief that God does not exist. Well, that still describes an atheist. Does anybody disagree with that? Let me know. I see you guys having a conversation on lactose intolerant. It's funny when you start attributing these terms to things like rocks, because Aron Ra does believe that rocks are atheist. I mean, he is a rock atheist. That's how absurd he has to go in his epistemology to believe that rocks are atheist, because he doesn't want to give up, his life's work, I guess. I think at that point, when you argue rocks are atheist, you're so far removed from any kind of rational thought that you're literally on the same grounding as like a flat earther. I really do believe that. So, does anybody disagree so far? Let me know. All right. This is the prescriptivist reading. The prescriptivist reading would be, does someone believe that God does not exist? Then they are an atheist. Does someone lack a belief God exists? Then they are an atheist. Clearly, the dictionary is descriptive. I need to put a space there. I see. And not prescriptive. English is not a prescribed language. However, Aron Ra et al. Assert that if someone lacks a belief God exists, they are an atheist, and even claims this is true by, I got to fix that as well, by some logical necessity that doesn't exist. I'm making these mental notes. This is why I actually like going over these in real time, because I can see any like grammatical errors. So I'll fix those. But see, that's a prescriptivist approach. Well, the dictionary says an atheist is this. Well, that's prescriptivism. That is literally saying that if you match these conditions, you are the word. That is what prescriptivism is when it comes to grammar. Or at least, kind of a offshoot of it. I mean, it's more technical than that, probably, but I'm not a linguist. But he argues that if a dictionary says a dictionary is somebody who believes there's no God or lacks a belief, he takes it as a disjunction, that if you meet either one of those conditions, you are an atheist. But that is prescriptivism. I don't know how else to explain that when somebody doesn't get that, because new atheists will say, well, yeah, dictionary is descriptive, but then they'll argue prescriptively. So that's the argument. That's the fallacy I coined as Argumentum ad prescriptorium. As Aron Ra et al. Are making the described rendering into a prescriptive one. So I got 3 errors I got to fix. It does not prescribe that whoever disbelieves or lacks belief is an atheist. Just like you can say theism, disbelief or the lack of belief in the non-existence of God or gods, as that describes a theist. A theist both disbelieves that God does not exist and lacks a belief in the non-existence of God. It would not prescribe that whoever disbelieves the existence of God or lacks a belief in the non-existence of God or gods is a theist. You have to have the same standard. This is what I'm saying by Aron and new atheists being hypocritical. They do not have the same standards across the board. They commit what's called a special pleading fallacy. They'll allow, certain things for themselves, but not for others. If you want to make atheism prescriptive, that anybody who just does not believe is an atheist, you have to allow theists to do the same thing. That's the crux of the weak atheist special pleading argument, aka WASP, that it's special pleading if it's not. And I don't see any way out of that. And I know people have literally sat there for hours on end in Discord arguing about my WASP argument. And not one single person that has a expertise in this matter came back to me and said, hey, Steve, we sat there, we went over your argument in WASP, and we found some errors. Not one. And they would. I mean, they would. I talk to, experts all the time. And they would love to show that I'm incorrect on stuff. And they've done stuff before. They were like, hey, Steve, I think you meant this, or I think, how are you arguing this? But what they do is they come to me in private and they'll be like, hey, by the way, this has been brought up, Steve, what do you mean by this? And then I'll explain it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, we got you. Because certain things require explanations. Do they not? Then that's what an honest interlocutor would allow somebody to do. Honestly, go to somebody and get their reasoning to why they said something the way they did. And maybe you might change it. You might say, hey, I didn't mean it that way. I can see how it could be some confusion. I'll change it, right? So, hi, free rebel. How are you? I'm doing well. All right. So far so good, because that's basically the first fallacy. That one's been out before. I've already named that in my paper, my by description. So that one's been out there before. But I am going to just put it into the Aron Ra fallacies at this point, because Aron Ra just continually makes that fallacy over and over and over again. That if he reads a dictionary, oh, you lack a belief, therefore you're an atheist. That is wrong. It has been wrong. It will always be wrong. It's wrong, 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 wrong. And matter of fact, what's funny is that neither Aron nor any new atheist TM, I got some alarms going off, I apologize, has ever been able to show that not to be correct. He has never had any citation, any expert come on say it's wrong. None, which is kind of strange for somebody who's really, putting out science that I agree with about biology, right? Obviously, I do accept evolutionary biology. So he'll give citations for that when asked, but he certainly won't when it comes to philosophy. And if he does, he gets it wrong, right? Every time somebody cites something, it's always funny because they almost always cite Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. That's the one thing that most of them cite, because myself and other people have used it so much. And it is the gold standard of philosophy, I think. But they get it wrong. They do not understand what they read, and they actually cherry pick. I had one guy the other day on Facebook literally cut off the first and last couple sentences and just took what's in the middle, negating the complete context of the paragraph that Draper was trying to show. The point being that lack of belief atheism shouldn't be accepted by philosophy people and philosophers. He completely removed that context, which is so dishonest. That's quote mining. That is definitive quote mining. Now, I don't believe that you have to take things out of context to quote mine. That, a lot of people say that quote mining is taking a quote and taking it out of context willfully or deliberately or even just unintentionally. But I don't think that's a necessary condition to be quote mining. I don't think you have to take it out of context. To me personally, and again, this is my personal position, you may not find anything that agrees with me on the literature, and I'm fully aware of that, because everything that I've kind of just read does seem to indicate that it's out of context. But to me personally, my personal view, if you quote somebody, even if you get it in context, but you're arguing it incorrectly, just to you're showing some quote that doesn't really support your position, which, I mean, in a way is out of context, I guess, in some ways. I'm going to take it as a quote mine. If you neglect all the other evidence around it, you just take one quote out of something, that's quote mining. Like, people say that, oh, well, see if you do that. No, I actually quote the things that support me. And, if you find evidence of things that don't support me, go ahead and quote that. And I'll explain why those quotes are not applicable, or why they're, wrong or misleading. Like, for example, just the other day, Aron had quoted Holbeck, D. Holbeck. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's from the 18th century, right? But Holbeck was not a very prolific philosopher. He was actually pretty, I would say, rather obscure at the time. He was a polemicist. He was a grenade thrower, so to speak, but nowhere near on the level like Voltaire. And so he was just throwing, grenades out there to get a rise out of people. And one of the things he argued or said was, we're born atheist. That was not something that was readily accepted at the time. So Aron had to go back to an 18th century, rather obscure polemicist to actually support his argument that babies are atheists. That's how far back he had to go. Kawasa 5001 says, "Oi, Steve, has or has not Aron doubled down that rocks are atheist?" Oh, yeah, no, he literally believes rocks are atheists. Yes, that he's double, tripled, quadrupled. Absolutely does he believe that rocks are atheist. Yeah, that's solidified in stone. Yes. Well, absolutely. Aron Ra is a rock atheist. He has to be, because what's so funny? On the local level, he is correct that using his argumentation, and let me make this clear, because people are going to quote me. This is what they do. They take what I say and they chop it up in videos on this particular topic. So they make it sound like I say something I didn't say. They've done this. I swear to God. They've done what's called Frankenstein cuts. It's pretty bad when you have to chop up what I say. But so let me make it very clear. Aron Ra is correct that rocks are atheist if and when you use his usages. That's why I think his usages are silly. The logic is the case that it follows necessity, locally, not globally, but locally, that if you use his usages, rocks are indeed atheist, which I think is absurd. So he does understand I think, basic logic because he understands enough to understand that using his usages, it is a less logical entailment. So he decides to have very bad logic that leads to very bad conclusions because I think the conclusion that rocks are atheists is very silly. So that in and of itself, the absurdity that it is, should tell you that there's something wrong with his reasoning, his logic. But if you use his usages, then yeah, rocks are atheists. Now, if you want to be a rock atheist, knock yourself out. But I can guarantee it. Everybody that I've ever talked to that knows philosophy is going to say you're probably an idiot. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it's just dumb. So, but it's so funny. I had a guy on the other night that was who came on was Mark Peacock, and he was so ridiculously dumb. But he didn't understand by using logic that using his usages, rocks are atheist. But even Aron Ra understood that. So even Aron Ra disagreed with him. And everybody in the live chat was telling him, no, Mark, this is the logic's correct. If you use his usages, this is what you end up with. But Mark wasn't even smart enough to even address any of that. Again, all my stuff is basic logic. Nothing I have is beyond probably freshman year logic. I mean, this is not grad level stuff. This is literally intro to philosophy level stuff that I do. I'm not under any disillusionment that my stuff is of any complexities. My paper may have been second year, if I had to guess. Maybe college level stuff, excuse me. But I did take 4 years of college. But I would have to ask a logician one of these days. Hey, in your expert opinion, after reading my paper, would you put this as freshman college or would you put it as second year college, sophomore year? And if they say high school or junior high or elementary school, I'm going to cry. But whatever. But if I had to guess, I would say that my paper is at is probably freshman or sophomore level. I'll ask Dr. Pye next time I talk to him, maybe, or Landon. I'll be talking to him soon. Because I am kind of curious what level they would put it at. In fact, let me ask my live chat for you guys out there that know a little about these topics. I know Kawasa's not an idiot. By the way, that's for me. For me, that's high praise, right? I love Kawasa because he gets it. To me to say, hey, you're not an idiot is like super high praise, right? I mean, obviously Kawasa is extremely brilliant. I love, his commentary and stuff like that. But I don't even have to say that Kawasa is brilliant. I can say, hey, he's not an idiot. And that's a super duper compliment right there, right? That's just how I am. But what do you guys think? I mean, do you for those who read my paper, would you put it at freshman or sophomore? I mean, I'm going to go. I don't know. Again, I don't want to say that a sophomore. I don't think I could substantiate that. But whatever. Compressor says, Compressor, by the way, yes, Aron Ra argues that rocks are atheists. Are you arguing that he doesn't? Because I assure you that he does. Rocks are atheists in Aron Ra's epistemology. Do you disagree with that? And yeah, I mean, again, it's so funny because, words have usages for a reason, right? It makes no sense to say like rocks are immoral. So what we say is rocks are amoral. Which, by the way, is going to be funny because we're getting into the next fallacy, which has something to do with these things. The direct logical negation of moral is not moral, but the direct logical contrary negation is amoral. So amoral is a contrary, not a contradictory. And that's what we're going to be talking about next, which is kind of funny because rocks are neither moral nor not moral, or what would be called immoral. Immoral would be not moral. Those terms are synonymous, right? To me, a synonymous term is exactly equivalent if you can put it in a sentence and the sentence remains opaque, which means that, or excuse me, transparent, which means that what's called opacity, the opacity of the sentence is such that it allows for you to have a substitution and it doesn't change the truth value. It doesn't change the truth value. So if I could put in, one word for another and the truth value doesn't change, then you say it has referential transparency. If it's referential opacity, you cannot change the term. It's not truth preserving. What is it? I hate this word. Salve veritas, verate, salve verate. I think I hate pronouncing Latin, people. But anyways, I know what it is, and I know exactly what it is. I just hate pronouncing the words. But like for example, like the morning star, Venus, was also known as phosphorus or it was Phosphorus and Hesperus. And so in the evening star, it was named one, and the morning star was named another. And it wasn't until I think it was who was it that discovered that? Was it Ptolemy? I don't remember who figured it out. I don't remember off the top of my head. But they realized it was the same star. But you can say, hey, I know Hesperus is a planet, and not substitute with Phosphorus, and you could know Hesperus as a planet, but not Phosphorus as a planet. So if I say I know Hesperus as a planet, if I substitute Hesperus with Phosphorus, even though they're the same object, the truth value can change if I don't know the other one's not a planet, right? So they have to be truth preserving. And so moral and not moral are the contradictories, and not moral is synonymous with immoral. You can substitute those, and I think that there's no difference in the truth value of a proposition. But amoral is neither. A rock is amoral. It has no morality, but it's not immoral, because immoral has a connotation of being not moral as an unethical person, right? So we have three categories that a rock can be in: moral, not moral, which is amoral, immoral or amoral. Same thing goes to atheist, theism, agnosticism, which we'll get into. And so this kind of dovetails into this next fallacy quite a bit. This one, hopefully, we can get through, because this is complicated, I think. But so, all right, let's get into this. So this one I did name, quote, Duplex negatio affirmit fallacy. How do you like that name? Duplex negatio. I'm probably butchering this, by the way. If you speak Latin, please let me know. Duplex, is it negatio or negatio? I think in Latin it's negatio. I don't know. Duplex negatio affirmit fallacy, right? And basically that just means the double negation, okay? Because this is what Aron and I were talking about why he didn't understand what double negation was. And a lot of people on Facebook don't, because a lot of them will say that that's a double negation when I say above, because this dovetails from this, because if I say theism is the disbelief or does not believe in the non-existence of God or gods, people are like, well, that's a double negation. Well, no, it's not. It's not a double negation in grammar, because in the matrix clause, in the subordinate clause, you have one negator, and in the non-subordinate clause, you have a negator. And so the subordinate clause and the non-subordinate clause are in the matrix clause, and they're separate the clauses are separate. They're nothing where you can put it together where you have not P, right? Then a double negation would be not P, and that's not what's happening here. You're saying that you do not believe that P is false. That's not a double negation. You're just like, I don't believe P is true. I don't believe P is false. Neither of those are a double negation. So if I say I don't believe P is false, and the negation of P happens to be God, the non-existence of God, it's just basically saying I do not believe in the non-existence of God, right? All right, so let's get into this. My voice is going. I'm sorry. That's why I'm drinking this coffee. Hopefully it was like, fix it. Hang on, I got a cough. All right. Aron Ra's and New Atheist confusion on what a double negation means in sentential logic as compared to intuitionist logic, and failing to understand contrary negations versus contrary negations as they apply to atheism and theism. Once again, if you know logic, please proof this for me. Let me know if I made some conceptual errors. This is based on Lawrence's Horn's work. Anybody who knows about linguistics is probably familiar with Horn. Most of this is kind of reference to the Oxford Handbook of Negation that Horn has entries in. So that's where a lot of this comes from, is from Horn's work. He also is the one that worked on what's called neg raising or negation raising, where you have a particular verb that's raised to a negation because of grammar and the way the grammar is parsed out for the diagrams. Which I mean, I get his argument to some degree, but I don't necessarily 100% agree with him. But anyways, let's get into this. Aron Ra and other New Atheist TM, for some bizarre reason, seem to think that the sentence, quote, I do not believe that God does not exist, is a double negation. Hint, it's not. They do not seem to understand that one negator is on the non-subordinate part of the matrix clause of I do not believe. That's the non-subordinate part, where the word believe is an intentional verb followed by the subordinate clause that God does not exist. The verb believe is an intentional verb, means that you have to believe in something. Something is doing the believing of something. That's what kind of intentional verbs mean. So I think, I ran, I went, I want. Those have intentional verbiage because it is a indexical, which is case me, or some subject s. Usually it's s or me, followed by what is happening, right? And so in this particular case, I do not believe, which means I don't hold something to be the case, that God does not exist. These two negators do not cancel each other out, as they are neither contrary nor contrary negations. One is on the predication, one is on the proposition. You cannot say, I do not believe that God does not exist, means I do believe that God does not exist. Now, again, we're not going to get into negation raising because it is really complicated. And I don't claim to fully understand the complexities of negation raising, but I get the basic understanding of it. But you can't logically say I do not believe not P it means that you do believe P. Now, could it? Sure. But it also means you could believe neither, right? And I've proven that using actual logic before, right? Does not believe P can either mean that you believe it's false or you have no position either way. You do not believe P, you do not believe not P. That's called agnostic, by the way, people. Hi. Aron et al. Do not seem to understand how double negators actually work logically, nor grammatically, or typically a double negation is in the form of not P equals P. By the way, can you see this on the outside? I'm just so focused on reading this, I can't even tell if you guys are seeing it on the outside. Oh, you are. Okay. One second here. I got to fix something. I've lost something in my OBS here. One sec. There we go. That's how I want it. All right. Excuse me. Aron et al. Do not seem to understand. Okay, so not P. Now, if you look closely in here, these little funny little tail things are called negations, right? So in sentential logic or classical logic, not P is just P, or P could be converted to not P, right? So if you see it is not the case that is not the case P, you can just say P. Example, in the sentence, I do not believe that God does not exist, assume the indexical of I. It can be denoted as not B, not P, or it is not the case that I believe that God does not exist. This is logically and grammatically equivalent to it is not the case that I believe P is false. Now, it's funny, they'll say the top is a double negation, but they won't say the bottom one. The other one is a logical negation, but they're logically and grammatically equivalent, I think. I don't see the difference, right? Because you're saying that God does not exist, that is P is false. P is true as God exists. P is false as God does not exist. So all you're doing is you're substituting that God does not exist with is false, and so they're exactly the same thing. So it is not the case I believe P is false. It's clearly not a double negation, because I can have no position either way. Since if you believe that P is false, or you do not believe that P is false, clearly you do not believe that P is false. That does not entail that you believe P is true, as you could believe neither P is true nor false, excepting, of course, that it must be the case one or the other. Oh, it must be one or the other, but holding no belief as to which truth value that it actually holds. What I mean by that is, according to the principle of bivalence and the law of excluded middle, a proposition has to be true or false. So, yes, you can accept that the proposition God exists is either true or false, but not having a position on it. You can accept that you don't accept its truth, you don't accept its false, right? Even though you know it must be true or false. You know there must be a truth value assigned to it. If God exists, then theism is true. If God does not exist, atheism is true. And that's why Oppie will say that theism and atheism are called contradictories. If one is true, the other is false. They both can't be true and they both can't be false. But the beliefs of atheism and theism are not contradictories. They're contraries. They both can be false, meaning meaning that you having the belief cannot be the case. It doesn't have to be the case. If I don't believe it's true and I don't believe that's false, that's a case where I neither accept that's true or false. That's where it fails to meet the conditions of believing true and believing false, because I have neither belief. So. However, this is not found in all forms of logic. There's a difference between negations between not hot, and it is not hot with a hyphen, with a negator's prefix. If you look on the word there, not hot, there's a prefix there. The prefix is not. Prefix is attached stronger. So the sentence not hot, unaffixed, is not the same as not hot, where it is affixed with a prefixed negator. They're not quite the same thing. And this is confusing to Aron Ra. So double negation does not hold the same intuitionistic logic as it does in sentential logic, and here's why. This is where I think the fallacy really gets explained. So, you guys following along out there? You guys okay? Not hot with a fixed or prefixed negator is hot, right? That I think makes sense, where the negator is prefixed. Not hot. Okay, you're just negating the not, so it's hot. However, not hot is morphosyntactically. However, not hot morphosyntactically does not, by logical necessity, mean hot. But here's why. Now, this is where you have to really think about this. You're like, wait a minute, what's the difference between not with a prefix and not without a prefix? Well, I think there's a huge difference, because while logically not hot would just be hot if you just negated the not. And a lot of a lot of grammar people would say that's how you do it in grammar. If you have two negations as a double negation and they cancel each other out, it just means hot. It doesn't work that way in logic, at least in intention. It was called intuitionist logic. In classical logic, okay. It doesn't even work that way in grammar, believe it or not. It not hot should not be interpreted as hot in grammar. And I know a lot of people are going to give me flack for that. They're like, well, that's not what I learned in grade school. You're going against third grade grammar. No, they don't teach you everything in grade school. That's why. So, there's a reason why not hot does not translate grammatically into hot. And here's why, because it's called contrary negations. Given G is the proposition it is hot, using Stoic and Frege logic, one can replace negation with it is not the case. In other words, when they talk about negators, they're like, okay, what's the best way to describe a negation? And one way to do it grammatically is just to substitute not with it is not the case. Right? If you don't think something's true, you can say it is not the case, P. So, April, do you want to go back? No, too long. Didn't read would take too long. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't have the time. I only got an hour to wrap this up, and we're not even close to being done. But the first one is the first fallacy of Argumentum ad prescriptorium. The second one is my double negation error that I think Aron makes. All right, so it is not the case where not represents a logical contradiction negation. Sometimes you'll see I use a tilde, sometimes use a tail. I don't really have a rhyme or reason why I use the other one. It's usually based upon my citations, though. If I'm using a tail, I usually have it's what the citation reads. If I'm using a tilde, it's what the citation reads. Generally speaking, that's not always the case, but generally speaking, I base my verbiage off the citations. So if I have to go back to source what I wrote, I can. If I use G or P, that's also the same way. P for proposition or G, that's the same way. It's because of the citations I'm using. So if you see me switch between G and P, that's the reason. All right. Usually G is, I like to use G mostly for like God claims, right? God exists, I use G, and that's what I'm using G here for, because it will get into that. So if I use P for any proposition and then G for specifically for God sometimes. So, all right, G, it is hot, not G. It is not the case that it is hot. Pretty simple. In sentential logic, not G equals G. Okay, so if you're doing a logical proof and you come across not G, you can just write G and you can cite it as a rule of double negation. However, not G, it is not the case that it is hot equals not hot equals hot. Now that's fine for sentential logic, right? Now you said you're going to be like, Steve, but you said not hot doesn't equal hot. Yeah. In other forms of logic. In sentential logic, you can write not hot equals hot, but this does not work grammatically. This wouldn't work grammatically, and it wouldn't work in intuitionist logic. So it would only work if you're in propositional logic, also known as sentential logic. However, not G does not equal G in intuitionist logic, since the rules for intuitionist logic are phi entails not phi, or phi does not entail not phi, or sorry, but phi does not entail not phi. What that means is, if you see, this is a metalogical symbol, by the way, that phi or rho you'll see sometimes, or psi, you'll see different things representing a metalogical symbol in the Greek. What that Greek symbol is saying is that you can instantiate it with any proposition in a logical system. So I've gone over L1 logical systems before, and logical sentences. But in a structured logical L1 sentence format, that symbol would represent a set of propositions. So in that set of propositions, for any proposition you instantiate it with, that's why it's metalogical. It would entail does not. It has a double negation of that, but you can't go backwards. Okay. Oh wait, you know what? I wrote that wrong. Now that I see it, see, this is why I actually proofread this. I actually wrote that wrong, and nobody caught it. Holy crap! I wrote that wrong, and nobody caught this since I published it. This is what I'm saying. It has not been proofed. There's an error here. There is an error here. I did not intentionally leave this in, by the way. This was not a gotcha moment. This was not a test. I literally had put in here that I have not had this proofread by anyone, right? And because I want people to know the difference between something that's proofread by experts and something that's not, because I want my stuff to be right. This has not been proofread, and I've made that very clear. I just recognize an error I have in here. It doesn't affect my argument, by the way. Doesn't at all affect my argument. The argument's still correct. I just put something wrong. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. No, shit. I'm sorry. You know what? Hang on. No, yes. Yeah, I did. I did put something wrong. Can you guys spot the error? The error is in this line here. See if you guys can figure this out. Where's the error there? There's an error in that line. Can you guys spot the error, Kawasa? So I've got three minor things to fix, which are just spacing errors and stuff. But this has an actual error. Can you guys see it? Anyone? You guys want to come in? The link to join is there if you want to join. Kawasa, come on. Anybody? Killing me, guys. Come on. Nobody? Anybody? Come on. I'm sitting there. It's all word salad. Nobody could figure this out. I'll give you a hint. The error is right here somewhere. Do you want me to even narrow it down? Right there. There's a massive logical error there. Okay. So you want me to tell the error and I'll fix it? I said here, this right here is the case in intuitionist logic, but here I wrote it as this. This should be backwards. This is true in intuitionist logic, that you can take phi entails not phi, but the opposite, not phi does not entail phi. So this not phi should be on this side. This should be written as this. I'll put it in the live chat. And by the way, this is actually one of the main reasons why I go over this live, because when I write this stuff, you go over it, but when you go over it live, you're forced to more proofread it. It should read that way. It should read like that, right? So the whole sentence should be this. And I'll fix it when we're done. That's how it should logically read. Does that make more sense? because I'm saying that phi can be written as not phi, but not phi cannot be written as phi in intuitionist logic. So yes, I goofed there. But here's the thing, like I said, I put this out, 3 days ago or something like that? 2 days ago? I don't know when it was. 2 days ago, I think it was. And I know people have read it. Not one person spotted this error. So they're not trying very hard. You new atheists out there, you're not trying very hard because none of you spotted that. So, and by the way, I didn't have anybody go, "Hey, Steve, I read your thing, and I absolutely agree." Nobody did that, right? So, I've had some people cursory read it, but so what are you asking, Kwasa? No, phi does entail not phi. Yeah, phi does not entail not phi. No, you can go one way, you can't go the other way. Phi does entail not phi. You can go that way. You can't go backwards. You can't say not phi equals phi. In intuitionist logic, you have to derive a contradiction separately. You cannot derive it by double negation. You have to derive it separately, and one of the reasons I think is because of contrary negations. But the phi, this is how it should read right here, just like that. Because you can go one way, you can't go the other way. All right, I will fix that in the blog here when I get done with this. All right, this can be seen as a contrary negation given if G it is hot, then copyright G. That's, by the way, copyright G is just a symbol Horn uses for contrary negation. It is not the case that it is hot, which means it is warm or cold, as both warm and cold are not hot. This is a contrary negation. Now think about this. The logical negation of hot is not hot. The logical negation of cold is not cold. The logical negation of warm is not warm. The contradictory negation of something is just adding the prefix of not. Theist, not theist. Atheist, not atheist. Agnostic, not agnostic. It's an instantiation of A or not A, always must be true by law of negation. Always. So A or not A. Theist or not theist or not theist, car or not car, blue or not blue. That's all it is. Those are contradictories. So hot or not hot. But warm and cold are both not hot, right? So you have the set of things that are warm, or you have the set of things that are cold, you have the set of things that are hot. Something could be warm, cold, or hot. They're all mutually exclusive. They're all jointly exhaustive. Well, they're not. I'm not going to say they're jointly exhaustive only for the reason there's gradients. But this is arguendo. If you want to grant me arguendo, let's just call them mutually exclusive. Just arguendo, because I don't want to get into like whether lukewarm is temperate, it's frigid, it's freezing. Yes, there's different gradients, but just for the sake of this argument, to make it simple, because it's to conceptualize the argument, let's just say they're jointly exhaustive. But again, it doesn't make much of a difference. They are mutually exclusive, though, right? If something's warm, it's not hot. If something's cold, it's not hot. Okay, so the logical negation of the contrary here, it is not the case that it is not the case that it is hot. It is not the case that it is not. That it is not the case that it is hot, meaning it is hot. That does not flow correctly. You cannot say something, it is not the case, it is not the case that it is hot, meaning that it is hot, because you could mean cold or warm. Because cold and warm are both the contraries. Well, I would say cold is the if you want to make cold the contradictory of hot, that's fine. Because if you want to say what's the opposite of hot, what's the well, no, still would be a contrary, because not hot would be the contradictory. But you can't just double negate it like that. You can't just double negate it and say, okay, it's not the case and not the case, therefore it's hot. And here's why. This is the case as if it's not hot, that it does not necessitate it as cold, because it could be lukewarm. I'm just going to call it warm to make it easier. Because if I say it is not the case, it is not the case that it is hot, or not hot, I should say, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily cold. It could be warm, because both warm and cold are not hot. This is why if you say, what's the negation of warm and cold, it'd be hot, because both of them are not hot, right? Both warm and cold are not hot. But you can't do a double negation the other way, because if I do a double negation on hot, it doesn't tell you whether it gives you warm or cold. It's not hot. But okay, which not hot is it? Is it cold or warm? I know it's confusing, but you have to think about it for a while. But that's how a contradictory negation is different from a contrary negation. Hi, Free.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, what up?
What you're talking about right now, I've been trying to figure out with the train of thought of logic since the dumpster fire you had with Mark Peacock the other night.
God, that was brutal.
Oh God. Anyway,
is he? I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Was this guy stupid or what?
Oh my God.
He thought it was so brilliant, and I'm like, this guy's a freaking idiot. I mean, to an extreme, and he thinks he's so smart, and I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me, bro.
Well, watching other YouTube creators that we have in common, they're either considered a troll, or a po. I'm like, what if we have both? What do we call them? I said a prol.
A prol.
P-R-O-L-L.
Yeah. Prol. Yeah, I don't think he's a troll. I think he's just stupid.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
But with he's talking about universal sets, natural, not natural. And, I said I'd heard of it, but I didn't know. And you and John did a great job explaining it to me in a way I can understand. But now, it's like, trying to be able to infuse the logic to break something down because I claim to be theist. So if you put that in universal set, you got theist, not theist.
Right.
But when you try to make the connection to theist to natural, is it natural or not natural?
Yeah, well, like I said, when we're talking about theism, most of the time we're talking about things that are in the non-natural set because that's how we use the words. But to most people, if God exists, it's going to be non-natural. It's something beyond our daily experience.
Well, now following along that line, if theism is not natural, can we subclass it as supernatural?
Yes. That's why I do it, yes. If something's non-natural, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to say that's the same as supernatural.
This is where I'm trying to connect the dots. What's that? I'm sorry, you broke up.
Oh, if something is non-natural, I'm just going to say that's synonymous with supernatural. In other words, you can say X is in the set of non-natural, and you can say the X is in the supernatural, and it doesn't change anything. They're the same thing.
Well, now, like I said, I just I've been doing a lot of thinking since that night. When it comes to, and it don't matter the debate issue. If you got someone that's cited to be as natural to the point of being supernatural, to arguing, debating, or they can't correlate, what's the debate?
You're breaking up, and I didn't quite get that.
Or having that debate if they can't
Are you on a phone?
In that,
are you on a phone? Yeah, you're breaking up.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, can you get your computer because you're breaking up like every other word.
You want? I'll go ahead and hang up if you want to answer. Get back on Noob Live.
Okay. All right. All right. So let me get through this. All right. So now apply the same reasoning to atheism, theism, and you have the Aron Ra fallacy. Just replace hot with theist, cold with atheist, warm with agnostic. I mean, that actually seems to work, right? It seems to work. All right. G is a theist. Contrary G, it is not the case that it is theist. Not contrary G does not mean it is a theist. And again, because of an intuitionist logic, for contrary negation, you can't get a double negative to be the original, right? So if you can't get the double negative to be an original, then not negation, negation of the contrary negation of G, it is theist. That doesn't hold, right? So in intentional logic, sure, but not in intuitionist logic. So the contrary negation of it is theist. So it would be it is not the case that it is theist, right? Because you're substituting it is not the case for the negation. That the negation of the contrary of G does not mean it is theist, as per intuitionist logic. This is the case since double negation of a contrary negation, such as it is not the case that it is not the case theist, does not necessitate that is the case that it is atheist. Oh, Wesley, I don't want to deal with you today. I don't have time. Bye-bye. I have Wesley in the background there. He's not coming in. He can sit there and just piss off. I don't have time for his nonsense. I do need some serious mental health. It is not the case that it is not the theist. It does not necessitate that is the case that it is an atheist. It could be the case that is agnostic. Now, what I mean by that if you have a contranegation of theist, meaning it is not a theist, it does not by double negation or necessity mean you're an atheist. You're going to be agnostic. Why? Because agnostic and atheist are both not theist, as I've explained millions of times. So if you say it is not the case that it is not theist, it doesn't mean you must be an atheist. Just like if it is not the case that it is not hot, does not necessitate it is cold. You can have warm. This is the Aron Ra fallacy. This is where the crux of the matter comes into play. The negation of theism does not necessitate atheism. It just simply does not. Aron can not prove otherwise. I challenge him or any new atheist to show me the logic. They never have. They never will. I'm confident that they are absolutely wrong on that. That in the standard understanding of atheism and philosophy, that atheism is the contradictory of theism, that both cannot be true, both cannot be false, but one is true, the other is false. But the logical negation of the belief, or excuse me, of the positions, such that you can hold neither, would be contraries. So the belief that God exists and the belief that God does not exist are contraries. This is what I put in my paper. When you look at the square of opposition, you'll see that atheism is in the top right corner, theism is in the top left corner. Why? Because for a square of opposition, those are contrary positions, right? I don't have to be a theist. I don't have to be an atheist. I can be neither and hold a neutral position. The same thing with you don't have to be hot. You don't have to be cold because those are contraries. You can be warm. But if you look at a square of opposition, matter of fact, I challenge somebody. How about this? I challenge somebody. This would be easy. This is something you can actually do. Wesley Curry 3 is a professional troll. Yeah, I get it. Although he's not professional because he doesn't make any money off it. He's just insane. I blocked him in the live chat. Yeah, I don't want to deal with his nonsense. But here, I want to challenge somebody. So Kawasa or somebody else, Pheasant. I mentioned you earlier, by the way. I want you to see if somebody can actually do it. Make a square of opposition, right? A symbiotic square of opposition, and do it with hot and cold and warm. So with hot, cold, and warm, make a semiotic square of opposition using those three things. I'll even tell you what they are. Hot, not hot, cold, not cold. Your subcontraries are going to be not hot, not cold, and your contraries are going to be hot and cold. And so the subcontraries of not hot and not cold, we call warm. But I want to see if somebody out there can actually make that. And then if you want, go ahead and substitute atheist and theism and tell you what you get. And agnostic, right? Go ahead and try. You're going to end up, I can almost guarantee it. You know, you may orient it different, which would be weird. But I mean, sometimes you can do a square of opposition upside down, which is the same thing. It's just in reverse with the subalternations going up rather than down. I prefer them going down for the implications of the subalternations. But if you want to do it up, that's fine too. But who's going to take me up on that challenge? Chris will, because, Chris loves that stuff. Hereticals. Aron is one of the most holy figures of in atheism. You should not question him. I know. Dude, that's why I am a heretical, right? I am a heretical. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Steve. What's going on, man?
Hey, man. So, you following along so far?
I don't know much about philosophy and all that stuff.
That's all good.
So,
I got to go back and figure out. I fixed my logical error because that was a big one, so I fixed that already. And I cannot believe that nobody found that error. This is what I'm saying. There's only a handful of people that I trust to actually proofread these things that know logic. They would have spotted that. But until somebody does, I cannot say that my arguments have been proofed. And I want to make people very clear of that, or read by somebody who knows what they're doing. Can you mute? By the way, it's you got a bad background noise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nah.
Oh, it's bad.
Oh, I thought
it's so hard in my ears. I'm sorry, Brandon. I hate muting somebody. That was loud. It was high pitched in my ears, and I can't take that. You just unmute when you want to talk. That's fine. All right. So let me continue here and get through this because, like I said, I got to be done in 45 minutes. It follows in that if G is it is the case, then contrary to G, it is not the case that it is theist, which could mean it is agnostic or it is atheist, as both agnostic or atheist are not theist. Yeah, simple, right? Just like agnostic and theist are not atheist. Just like theist and atheist are not agnostic. An element is either in the set of theist, set of not theist, but in not theist, you're an agnostic or an atheist. But those sets are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive for all practical purposes. Again, there's some technicalities involved when you want to deal with theological non-cognitivists, but I'm not going to get into that. But generally speaking, the structure is such that you are going to be a theist, atheist, or agnostic, and they are mutually exclusive. That's for sure. If you want to argue they're not jointly exhaustive, there's some credence to that only because you're dealing with something called innocence. You're dealing with theological non-cognitivists, but it just, the only way to really do that, I think, is use first order logic, which I'm not that good with. And I tried using first order logic and it got really complicated very fast. But anyways, the negation of the contrary negation would be not contrary negation G, and not contrary negation of G does not mean it is theist. Since if it is not the case, it is agnostic does not mean it is theist. It could mean atheist, which is really simple to think about. If these are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive, if you're not agnostic, it means you have made a decision. You have been convinced one way or the other about God's existence. Oh, you're not agnostic? Which side of the fence do you fall on? Oh, I believe that there's God. Or I believe there's not a God. See how that works? So if you say, what is the contrary negation of it is theist? It does not mean you can say it is atheist, because you can be agnostic. Now remember, the logical contradictory negation of it is theist would be it is not theist, right? But contrary negations and contradictory negations do not work the same way because of the fact, like I said, in intuitionist logic, you do not have the rule of double negation. So, at least not, you have it one way, you don't have it the other way, right? So the Aron Ra fallacies in summary would be the fallacy of thinking descriptive dictionaries are prescriptive, and for thinking that, quote, I do not believe that God does not exist is a double negative. Aron Ra doesn't understand contradiction negation versus contrary negation. It does not understand that atheism and theism are logical contradictories where if one is false, the other must be true. Both cannot be false and both cannot be true. E.g., if God exists, then theism is true and atheism is false. If God does not exist, then atheism is true and theism is false. But the beliefs of atheism and theism are contraries, as you can fail to believe G is true and fail to believe G is false, ergo agnostic. Note, Aron Ra is great at explaining. I wanted to throw this in because, again, I get Aron Ra's sycophants over here, right? Like Hereticals, who's a huge Aron Ra fan. Chris out there, a.k.a. Hereticals, he loves Aron Ra and Jimmy Snow so much. He just worships the ground they walk on. I really think that if he can be in a polygamous relationship with Aron and Jimmy Snow, he probably would, because he's just so madly in love with both of them, because he just thinks they're so brilliant and so amazing and honest and I'm just messing with you. Chris is like, you're blocked. Pheasant says, Steve knows how to get me to go watch the beginning I missed. Just say I was mentioned. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I did. I mentioned you and Tim Whitmarsh. But anyways, I wanted to add this on here for the sycophants, because again, this is nothing personal with Aron. I'm not trying to get Aron's attention, because Aron will never respond to me. That's clearly Aron will never respond to my arguments, because he can't. He just says I'm wrong by fiat. He doesn't ever admit that he's wrong, even though he says he does. He's like, oh, I'll admit when I'm wrong. Okay, and I've seen him do it, right? But in this particular case, even if every person in the world that knows logic told him he was wrong, he will not ever admit that he was wrong on it. He can't. His whole life has been dedicated to a lie. His whole life has been dedicated to this weird misconception that atheism is lack of belief, which is such nonsense and such, I think, philosophical naivety. It boggles my mind that any rational human being can think that way, because they're not taking into account any of the problems that run into when you have that kind of terminology. Draper points out 3 very good reasons why not to use atheism as lack of belief. New atheists have never addressed those. I give like 10 reasons, And new atheist TMs have never addressed them. And I know Aron won't. And Aron will never figure out that he's wrong about double negation. I believe that he will never recognize either of his Aron is great. Let me just read this over again. Aron Ra is a great explaining phylogeny, as that is his niche. But he is absolutely intransigent on other subjects, even when the logic clearly demonstrates he is incorrect. I believe he will never recognize either of his errors, no matter how many people who understand logic tell him he is wrong, which leads him to bizarre claims like, quote, rocks are atheists, which you guys were talking about earlier. When you start with faulty premises, you can end up with faulty conclusions. Then my name. And I put in here, this post may contain errors and has not been proved by experts in related errors. If any errors are found, please let me know directly via AM, DM, or email, and I'll promptly correct them. Thank you. Nobody pointed out that big error, right, that I said to you guys. Nobody pointed out that logical error in my meta logic. Easy fix, right? It doesn't at all affect my argument, but it is a logical error. Well, I shouldn't say that. You know what? I'm going to rephrase that. I'm sorry. I'm going to rephrase. I'm going to retract what I just said, because I do reproof myself. I go back and I do correct my errors. Obviously, I'm doing it right now as we speak in the blog. I'm fixing it as we go along. But I got to go back to the beginning to fix those errors that I missed. But it isn't a logical error. It's just the way I stated it was wrong. What I meant to say was something completely, different. I should have put it the way I stated the statement at when it was back here. Since I started with the premise and intuitionist logic that not GG. I haven't updated this yet, by the way. I have fixed it, but I haven't updated it. But here's right here. I started with not G does not equal G, and that should be what this is over here. It should be not phi does not entail phi. So well, no, that is a logical error. I'm sorry, because I do have this as a does not. So yep, I'm going to take back my last take back. Don't you love proofreading stuff? I mean, I'm going to take back my last take back. Yes, this is a logical error because this statement is not true. This statement is not true in intuitionist logic. The correct statement is this. I have the does not entail is wrong here, because this should be on the other side, as I told you guys. So there you go. But see, I really do want to get my stuff correct. This is why I go over it. This is why I go over it in real time, because when I'm reading it out verbally, I can find the errors easier than when I'm just reading it after I've written it, because I'm a visual person and I'm an auditory person. I speak, and when I'm speaking in it and I think, oh, that doesn't sound right, I can go fix it. But it is funny that of all the people that read this particular blog entry, the ones that say my logic is wrong but don't demonstrate it, he was a perfect example of a logical error they could have pointed out. And they didn't. April, you can't do it in live chat, but just put it in an imager and then send me the link for it. So, and then, or tweet it out if you got Twitter. Oh, chemo, that's just stop it, chemo. Some rocks are ignorostic, yeah, they're ignostic, yeah, igneous agnostics, yeah. So, anyways, that's what I'm going to wrap it up on that. If you got questions, let me know. Come on in the StreamYards if you want. I am trying to, like I said, I'm trying to fix this as I go. So I had some errors up here that I'm going to fix real quick. My grammatical errors and spacing errors. I know one of them was very clear. I had a double word somewhere too. I was making mental notes, and then I forgot a space on somewhere. Wasn't the top part here? Let's see. I'm reading it. Didn't I have like but somewhere up here? 2 butts or 2 ands? Yeah, I'll go back and fix it. The main grammatical error is not really a huge thing to me. It's really the logic. I want to make sure the logic is correct. Yeah, I'll go back and fix those later. All right. So, anyways, agnostic. All right. So, hey, so who's gonna try to do a square of opposition, a semiotic square of opposition using hot, cold, and warm? Who's gonna do it? Pheasant, you gonna give it a shot and then put it on Twitter? Just use any kind of writing writing thing, and just do a symbiotic square of opposition and label where hot, cold, and warm would you think would go. I'll kind of break it down for you. I think that you should have hot, not hot, cold, not cold, and warm. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels you should, and you can put not warm too if you want, by the way. So 6 labels. And that's, by the way, that's funny because that what leads into what Dr. Demi put as the hexagon of opposition. By labeling the 6 points, you're basically kind of making a hexagon of opposition, because you have theist, not theist, you have atheist, not atheist, you have agnostic, not agnostic. You have warm, not warm, hot, not hot, and cold, not cold. And so in Dr. Demi's paper, Hexagon of Opposition, this is what he notes. He notes there's 3 positions. He notes that the logical negation of theism is not atheism. He notes the logical negation of atheism is not theism. When Aron et al., including all the new atheist TMs, say atheism is synonymous, equivalent, exactly the same as not theism, you are wrong. Wrong, 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 as they say in Scrubs. You know, who's that doctor in Scrubs? Wrong, 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 wrong. You're wrong. And I challenge you to find somebody who knows logic. Ask Malpass if you want, right? Go ask Alex. Hey, Alex, is this the case? If Alex, who, he hasn't talked to me in a very long time, but he's been busy, but I've always admired Dr. Alex Malpass. I think he's absolutely brilliant. If Alex was to come to me and say, Steve, atheism and not theist, or atheism is the same as not theist, and atheism has always been a lack of belief, I'm going to listen to him. I'm going to think he's wrong unless he can demonstrate it, because I don't think he's going to have evidence for it. But if he gave me sufficient amount of evidence, I would change my mind like anything else. Because that's what honest interlocutors do. That's what open-mindedness is, as virtue epistemology would mandate. But I know Alex doesn't think that way. Alex actually agrees with me on all that. But I know for a fact that Aron Ra is never going to produce a single shred of evidence that he's right. He's never going to produce a logical, structured argument to prove beyond any doubt that atheism and not theism are the same thing. They're not. Atheism is a proper subset of not theist. Why? Because not all not theists are atheists. Some are agnostic, some are ichtheists, some are theological dichotomists. This is what I'm saying. It's not jointly exhaustive. Atheism, theism, and agnostic are not technically jointly exhaustive if you start adding in all these other things. But for the sake of the argument, limited scope, I can make it the case where they're jointly exhaustive. Okay? But if you want to add the other stuff, you're more than welcome to do so. If you wanted to add in the complexities of the math, of the logic, go for it. It is a lot more complicated. I tried. It's very, very difficult, I think. Alex, who's a professional logician, he could probably do it in his sleep. But for me, it's a challenge. But you definitely will say that they're mutually exclusive, right? You cannot be a theist and an atheist at the same time, in any kind of meaningful sense. In standard usages, you can't be you can't be both. It would be a contradiction. However, in Aron's usages, you can be both, believe it or not. I have proven that. In Aron Ra's usages, it follows rationally and epistemically that if you use his usages, you could have somebody who's a theist, atheist, and agnostic at the same time. That's the crux of the semantic collapse argument. And I'm not the one that first noted that. That was Dr. Graham Oppie, who I think is one of the greatest atheist philosophers of our generation. He noted that. He made that note that if you use weak atheism as atheism, if you use the entreaty that Dr. Flew wanted people to use atheism in the negative, the way the American atheists use it, the way that Aron Ra uses it, it will rationally seem to have to commit you to the position that it is possible to have somebody who's atheist, theist, and agnostic, which seems to me absurd. Now, granted, it's a semantic thing, right? It really is, obviously. People say, well, that's a semantics. Well, yeah, that's not the point. It is a semantic thing, but it's showing the poor usage leads to absurdities like that. You know? Hey, Cerberus.
Hello.
Hey. It's your favorite topic, man.
Well, yeah. I thought we covered this already.
I'd never broken down by logic. Oh God, are you in a wind tunnel?
Am I in the wind tunnel?
Yeah, wind tunnel. You got a lot of wind. You're, like blowing in your mic. Okay, never mind. You go back and listen. But yeah, no, I never broke it down by the difference between contrary and contradictory negations. I've never used that before. I mean, I've never tried to explain to people in a way to show Aron's Ra by breaking it down between the difference between a contrary negation and a contradictory negation. Because Aron thinks, okay, so if you have theist, the contradictory negation of theist is not theist. I think everybody agrees with that, right? That's not even remotely controversial, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It and not it. Yeah.
Yeah. Theist, not theist. Car, not car. Nobody should. I mean, if Aron starts arguing that's wrong, you know, he's even gone further than the obscure and absurd than rock atheism. But the contrary negation of theism is not theist. The contrary negation of theism could be warm. I'm not warm. It should be agnostic or could be atheist. Just like the logical contradictory negation of hot is not hot, but the contrary negation of hot, because of intuitionist logic, doesn't mean not hot. It doesn't mean okay. So let me rephrase it. The contrary negation of not hot does not mean hot. It could mean warm or cold, because cold and warm are both not hot. Does it kind of make sense? I know I'm phrasing it very difficult. Let me see if I can phrase it where this makes sense. The contradictory negation of not hot is hot if it's prefixed. But the contrary negation of not hot without the prefix does not mean the two knots just simply cancel out and you have hot. Because in double negation for intuitionist logic, it only works phi can be entailed as not phi, but not phi does not mean phi. So not hot does not mean hot. If you look at the meta logic of not hot, that is the same thing as the intuitionist double negation rule that doesn't work. It doesn't have it in intuitionist logic. I mean, if you look on the outside, and I haven't fixed it yet, damn it, and I don't want to update it yet. But are you in the live chat?
Yeah, I'm right now.
All right, so this rule here, which is not actually a rule because it's fall. This right there, okay. So you cannot convert that way. You cannot say not phi equals phi, because not phi does not equal phi in intuitionist logic. So if you substantiate phi with hot, not hot does not equal hot. Because in grammar it doesn't work that way either. And you'll see it all the time. You say, well, people like, I hate to say obfuscate, but they hedge their bets. They'll say things like, well, he's not a friend, you know, right? I'm not saying that I'm not going. These are things in grammar we mean by, oh, well, I'm not saying that I'm not going, but, you know, I may go. I'm not saying that I'm not. It's possible, but I'm not taking a position on it, right?
Okay, but I've only seen like the last 15 minutes. Can you connect this to Aron being wrong about?
Yeah, of course. Aron Ra. Okay, so a long time ago, the reason why Aron Ra blocked me on Facebook is because I had the sentence about theism, because he always says that, you know, he Googles and he's like, oh, atheism is a disbelief or lack of belief that God exists, right? And so I'm like, well, yeah, but theists could literally come along and use the usage. Theism is the belief that God exists, or the lack of belief that God does not exist, right? It's the same thing. It's just in the a coexistential thing, right? If you have one, you can have the other. It just follows naturally, right? Does that make sense?
I agree. They could both make sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, again, these are scriptive, right? But you got to remember, he's a prescriptivist, so he thinks that anybody who lacks a belief is an atheist, which include people that believe that there's no God. So if you do the same for theists and he holds the same prescriptivist thing, which is the first fallacy I talked about, he would say that he would have to be rationally entailed, or at least committed, that anybody who lacks a belief that God does not exist is a theist. Now, clearly, he's not going to do that, nor do I advocate that. Which people have got my positions wrong. They're like, oh, Steve thinks that anybody who lacks a belief God does not exist is a theist. No, I've never made that argument, ever. I'm just saying a theist could by using the same exact rules that Aron Ra uses. And if he doesn't allow that, that's special pleading, which is my WASP argument. So going real quick, so let me finish that. So how it relates to Aron, I said, hey, if I say I do not believe that God does not exist, and he's like, well, that's a double negation. I'm like, no, Aron, it's not. One's in the whole matrix clause, you have a subordinate and an ordinate clause, dependent, independent kind of stuff. So the negator is on the predication and the other one's on the opposition. They do not cancel each other out because he doesn't understand cancellations of negations. And he didn't understand that if I say I do not believe P is false, that doesn't mean I believe P is true. He'll get that. No, he actually understands that. If you tell Aron, well, if I say I don't believe it's true, that's not it's telling somebody that I must believe it's false, right? You can. These are contraries. Remember, this is why the contrary negation comes in, not contradictory negations. So he gets that, but he doesn't get that saying I do not believe it's false is exactly the same as saying I do not believe it is the case that God does not exist. It's the same thing. Get it? Make sense? Good?
Yeah, but I don't see the issue with a theist making a set that then it would include agnostics. Also, I don't think they would ever do it because why would they include people in their own set?
Oh, no, I agree with you. No, absolutely. Right. Theist, because you know why? Because theists, the whole reason they're theists is because they're putting forth something, right? They're not going to want to believe, they're not going to want to put people in their set that don't believe God exists, obviously. They want to do that. Yeah. You know, I mean, I get that. No, I think you're right on that. I mean, I cannot see a theist doing that unless a theist does it dishonestly, right? For demographic reasons. But isn't that what the same thing that Aron Ra and the American Atheists are doing? They're doing the exact same thing. They're dishonestly putting agnostic under atheist for demographics and for political reasons. So what's the difference?
I'm sure. Well, it's to get a bigger umbrella.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But
yes, absolutely.
But I mean, the same issue is still there if you leave it labeled non-theist. A theist could just come along and relabel "quote unquote" soft theism as theism, and then you could be a non-theist theist.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you like. That's there whether you call it atheist or not.
Yeah. I coined the. Well, I didn't. I can't say that I fully coined the term. The term has been out there, but it was used differently. So I took it and reappropriated the phrase semantic collapse. Obviously, you have modal collapse, right? But there are things for semantic collapse. But I in my argument, I just call that semantic collapse because you could have a person like myself using his usages. I would be not just an agnostic, but I would also be a theist and an atheist, which it just doesn't make sense to use verbiage like that. Because I'm a weak theist, I'm a weak atheist. All weak atheist and all weak atheists are weak theist, and they're also agnostic logically. There's no difference logically. I've proven that many times over.
But as it's being used, there is no weak theist position.
Right, because it's not being used. Right, and you're right, and that's why I always seem to argue if theists wanted to do this, right? If theists started using theism to mean anybody who does not believe God does not exist, then the dictionaries would reflect that because they're synchronic. And so the reason why the dictionary started reflecting change of usage is because new atheists came along and started using the word atheist differently. So in the English language, the synchronic sensu-lateral dictionaries are going to reflect that. It doesn't prescribe usages, though, and that's where Aron makes his mistake when it comes to prescriptivism.
Okay, but I think you're making the same mistake I tried to point out before, is that atheists and theists hold two positions on your square.
They hold they're contrary positions. On the square of opposition, they're contraries.
No. Every human being, right, that's thinking a thinking human being has to hold two corners of your square because there's only three positions a human being can be on.
We went over that, and you're absolutely right. Yes.
Right, and you want to label the bottom agnostic? That's fine. You want to label the one side atheist and the other side theist?
Yes.
There is no weak theism.
Well,
there's no one because
you got to remember, nobody's using it that way, but they could is the argument. That's it. But it's still logically a position, right? Not B, not P is a logical position. It still has to be on the square of opposition somewhere.
Yeah, but but when you define a word, it can be one corner.
I'm not following you. I mean, if weak atheism is just the person who doesn't believe God exists, it follows, and Oppie points this out. It just naturally follows that weak theism would be somebody who does not believe that God does not exist. You agree with that, right? It just follows naturally. You don't have to use it that way. Theists don't use it that way, but it does just naturally come out of that.
Yeah, but a weak atheist is the bottom two positions. Right?
So,
when they say atheist, they're referring to the definition that's just the bottom right corner.
but as you said, you have to hold two positions.
Yeah, but words don't.
No, agree. No, I agree with you. No, yeah, but positional wise though, if they're in the bottom left corner, it means they must be either bottom left and top right, or bottom left, bottom right. Correct? And by the way, the outside's like, how the hell these two people know? They're just doing this in their heads because you and I are familiar with this, and I know you are familiar with it. But I think a lot of people in the audience are going, how are they just doing in their heads? But you would agree that if you're in the bottom left corner, you have to be bottom left and top right, or bottom left, bottom right. There are no other options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no other I mean, unless you're like an insane person, there's no other option.
Yeah, that's why I throw in the word rational. I usually say there's three rational epistemic positions, right? Because if you start throwing in irrational epistemic positions, you start getting contradictions and things of that nature. And I don't want to go down that route of peculiar reasoning. So, but to wrap it up in a nutshell, though, that's why I want somebody, and you could do this too. Use warm, hot, and cold, and tell me what you get in the square of opposition. I do got to wrap this up. I got plans at 9:00 with somebody. I can't break, and I got to use the bathroom super bad. So I don't mean to cut this short, but I do have to wrap this up. But real quick, if you had to use hot, warm, and cold, where would you put them on the semiotic square of opposition that I've used?
Hot, warm, and cold.
Yeah.
For as a replacement for strong and weak, kind of.
Yeah, because I mean, and I start like you know the square, so you know the S1 start. I put on the top, S sub naught on the bottom. I think I have it because it's S1 or S sub naught, but it's also S or not S. So if you have S as the contraries, you have not S as the sub contraries. So if you started with the top, where you have the contraries on the top and the sub contraries on the bottom, where would you put warm, hot, and cold? And not hot, not cold.
I think there's only two positions for each.
Well, there should be 6 labels. You should have hot, cold, not cold, warm, and not warm. There's 6 independent labels there.
Yeah, but there's only 4 positions.
Right. But I'm just talking about labeling.
I guess I would lump some of the labels up into one position.
Okay, this is how I would do it. Well, do you want me to? You know what? I'm not going to say how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it, and I'll put it on Twitter sometime tonight and see if anybody beats me to it, and then go from there. I do got to go, though. I got to use the restroom. I'm going to die here. I'm old. Right. I think thanks to Hex. I appreciate it, man. I'm going to exit the thing here. All right, sorry guys, I got to go there use the restroom. I'm going to pee my pants if I don't, because I'm old. And this coffee just went through me. So I appreciate this, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know if you do attack this argument. Make sure you're talking about the structure. Make sure you don't kind of just personal attacks don't have interest to me. Show me the logic's wrong. Obviously, there was one logical error, but I've corrected it. And I'll update this in a few. All right. So yeah, by the way, like I said, to my mods and everybody watching, leave comments. Comments are great. They help the metrics, and I really enjoy reading them. So if you're a member, if you're a mod, you're just a listener,